guys, welcome back to this YouTube channel. Today we are going to be reading chapter 14 and it's called Mr. Greenbaum. Yesterday we read chapter 13 and it was called Money Worries. And this chapter talked a little bit about how Mr. and Mrs. Popper are kind of worried about how they're going to make their money because Mr. Popper works in the spring and the summer, and right now it's winter. So they're trying to figure out how they're going to make money. And in that chapter, they kind of figured out that the penguins are very good at performing and doing these different tricks. And Mr. Popper kind of related it to seals, how the seals kind of sometimes balance balls on their nose and perform these different sort of acts, and also train dogs. So he was thinking, oh, well, if we train all 12 of our penguins to do some sort of act, maybe they can perform and then we can make some money off of that. So that's where we left off, and now we're going to read chapter 14, and it's Mr. Greenbaum. We're going to see what happens. Okay, we're going to get started. Chapter 14, Mr. Greenbaum. "Look here," said Mr. Popper at breakfast one morning. "It says here in the Morning Chronicle that Mr. Greenbaum, the owner of the Palace Theater, is in town. He's got a string of theaters all over the country, so I guess we had better go down and see him." That evening, it was Saturday the 29th of January. The Popper family and their 12 trained penguins, 2 of them carrying flags in their beaks, left the house to find the Palace Theater. The penguins were now so well trained that Mr. Popper decided that it was not necessary to keep them on leashes. Instead, they walked to the bus line very nicely in the following line of march. And it has a picture of them all walking. Mr. Popper is at the very front, Greta and Captain Cook, Columbus and Victoria, there's Mrs. Popper, right here is Nelson and Jenny, this one is Magdalene and Adeline, here is Bill and Janie, here is Scott and Isabella, and Ferdinand and Louisa. They're the ones holding the flags. So this is how they're walking down the street. The bus stopped at the corner, and before the astonished driver could protest, they had all climbed on and the bus was on its way. "Do I pay half fare for the birds, or do they go for free?" asked Mr. Popper. "Janie goes half fare, but I'm 10, said Bill. "Hush," said Mrs. Popper, and she and the children found their seats. The penguins followed in an orderly fashion. "Say, mister," said the driver, "where do you think you're going with that exhibit?" "Downtown," said Mr. Popper. "Here, let's call it 50 cents, and let it go at that." "To tell you the truth, I lost count when they went past me," said the driver. "It's a trained penguin act," explained Mr. Popper. "Are they real birds?" asked the driver. "Oh, yes," said Mr. Popper. "I'm taking them down to the palace to interview Mr. Greenbaum, the big theater owner." "Well, if I hear any complaints, off they go at the next corner," said the driver. "Fair enough," said Mr. Popper, who wanted to ask for transfers in that case, but decided to let well enough alone. The penguins were behaving very well. They were sitting quietly, 2 in a seat, while the other passengers looked on. "Sorry," said Mr. Popper, addressing everyone in the bus, "but I'll have to open all the windows. These are Antarctic penguins, and they're used to having it a lot colder than this." It took Mr. Popper quite a while to open the windows, which were stuck fast. When he had succeeded, there were plenty of remarks from the other passengers. Many of them began to complain to the driver, who told Mr. Popper to take his birds off the bus. He had to repeat this several times. Finally, he refused to take the bus any further until Mr. Popper got off. By this time, however, the bus had got so far downtown that none of them minded having to get out onto the street. Only a block ahead of them shone the lights of the Palace Theater. "Hello," said the theater manager as the Poppers and the penguins trooped past him. "Sure, Mr. Greenbaum's here in my office. You know, I've heard about these birds of yours, but I didn't really believe it. Mr. Greenbaum, meet the Popper penguins. I'll be leaving you. I've got to go backstage." The penguins now standing politely in 2 rows of 6, each looking curiously at Mr. Greenbaum. Their 24 white circled eyes were very solemn. "Are you people crowding around the door? Go back where you belong," said Mr. Greenbaum. "This is a private conference." Then he got up and shut the door. The Poppers sat down while Mr. Greenbaum walked up and down the double row of penguins, looking them over. "It looks like an act," he said. "Oh, it's an act, all right," said Mr. Popper. "It's Poppers Performing Penguins. First time on any stage, direct from the South Pole." He and Mrs. Popper had thought up that name for the act. "Couldn't we call them Popper's Pink-Toed Penguins?" asked Mr. Greenbaum. Mr. Popper thought for a moment. "No," he said, "I'm afraid we couldn't. That sounds too much like a chorus girls or ballet dancers, and these birds are pretty serious. I don't think they'd like that." "All right," said Mr. Greenbaum. "Show me the act." "There's music to it," said Janie. "Mama plays the piano." "Is that true, madam?" asked Mr. Greenbaum. "Yes, sir," answered Mrs. Popper. "Well, there's a piano behind you," said Mr. Greenbaum. "You may begin, madam. I want to see this act. If it's any good, you people have come to the right place. I've got theaters from coast to coast. But first, let's see your penguins perform. Ready, madam?" "We'd better move the furniture first," said Bill. And that is where we leave off on chapter 14. So now we are on chapter 15, and the next chapter is called Poppers Performing Penguins. So in this chapter, the Popper family and the penguins all traveled downtown to go to this theater where Mr. Greenbaum, that he owned. He owned this theater, and he was going to see if they were good enough to perform. So in this chapter, they went down there, they met him, and it ended right whenever they were about to perform. Their first act, Mr. Popper said it was their first act on any stage, and they were direct from the South Pole. So this next chapter we'll read it on Monday, because today is Friday, and I'm not going to post on the weekends because I want you guys to enjoy your weekends. I want you guys to go outside, which I'm not asking you guys to do anything with this story anyway, but just so you don't have to do any type of schoolwork, anything like that for the weekend. So I will post the next chapter, which is chapter 15, on Monday. And if you guys have any predictions or anything you guys want me to know, comment below or send me a message on Class Dojo. I know I've been messaging with your parents a little bit to try to get them, for you guys to see the book and listen to me read. So, I will see you guys on Monday. I hope you guys have the best weekend. I hope you go outside. I hope it's sunny. I hope you get some fresh air. Go on a short walk around your house. Go outside and play. Go draw chalk on the sidewalk. Do whatever you want. But I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you on Monday with chapter 15. Bye, guys.